Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the first event of our NADA Miami 2020 programming series. I'm Max Warsh, Director of Programming at NADA. We are all very excited and honored to have renowned performance artist Karen Finley here with us in conjunction with her new works on view with Fierman Gallery as part of NADA Miami. First, Karen and David Fierman will do a walkthrough of the exhibition and works on paper, which are installed at Marinero Gallery in the Lower East Side. Then Karen will give a short dramatic reading from her book, Grabbing Pussy. And then after that, Rachel Mason, an artist and director of the documentary Circus of Books, will join Karen for a conversation. If you have any questions throughout, please write them in the chat, and we will have a short time at the end of the conversation for the artist to have an opportunity to answer them. And with that, I will hand it off to David Fierman to get started.
Okay, go.
Hello, I'm David Fierman. I'm at the Marinero Gallery, where I'd like to share with you the work of Karen Finley. First, I would like to thank Lauren Marinero for having us in her gallery. Without further ado, I will flip the screen. Wrong way. And here is, we're here in the gallery in Lauren Marinero's beautiful space. And just want to give you an overview. We are sharing, this is Karen's work, which we are sharing in a presentation with the work of Jeffrey Maris from Situations and Joseph Hart from Halsey McCain. And now I will turn off my mic and we will just do a walkthrough of Karen's pieces individually.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Before we get started here, I just wanted to say hello, welcome. And it's wonderful to be able to have this opportunity during this time of COVID and that we are still able to see art and that I have this opportunity to share my art with you. And before I begin and look at through this exhibition that I'm going to view, I just want to tell you a little bit about the work that I've been doing. My work really has been based on language and about speaking up and out about political issues and responding to usually American policy. And I really have been, as you have been feeling so much of the assault of language by the Trump administration and during these past 4 years. And the seeds of this project began with really feeling, how could I as an artist respond to this assault and the bombardment of language during this Trump administration? And so this language of cruelty, the lies, I also put into my own work, Grabbing Pussy, which I will be reading from in a little bit. So I really look at this work that I'm doing is really kind of being able to look at the performance of language, and that the artist then is able to respond with an urgency. And it was during this time of COVID that I've always been using language, but I felt this real urgency to be able to respond immediately and sort of in the form of protest and rebellion to go against the lies or and to kind of like deconstruct language. So let's start with some of the work, and I can give you sort of a walkthrough. And I'm so happy to be able to have this walkthrough even virtually in this world of Zoom. So this first piece that we're seeing here, You're Fired. And I am aware that I am not saying YOU''RE. I'm really taking this liberty of just getting the message across and just saying you're fired. And in some ways, it's kind of like working in this double way of meaning, right? So you're fired, the sense of what is fired, but there's an immediacy. So let's go a little bit closer to the work. And I did this immediately after when Trump was losing. And I started creating work on found paper, because with the scarcity during my quarantine, I ran out of paper. And I started going through maps and books and just an immediacy to get it. So this piece, You're Fired, and it says on the top there, opportunity stock. So I think that's sort of like humorous, the idea that the opportunity of him being fired and to leave. And also, I think that there's words behind it that talk about the addressing, that it has like addressing someone with barren. So I liked that too, of these kind of underlying meaning. All right, let's go to the next work. I love this. I really love this piece. I love seeing the work hanging and how it looks on the wall. And so I'm so happy to be able to have this opportunity, because I've been feeling sad and with my aloneness and creativity, not to be sharing it with the public. And so this says, "You fucking loser." And oh my goodness, it felt so great to write this. It feels so good to see it. It feels so wonderful to share it. And I made it on sort of like revolutionary kind of war figures in the back. And that's kind of like speaking to the founding of the nation. And I think it has these doubles, "you fucking loser," that it could be on different ways about looking at the system and policy. And then the words actually wash out or bleed out beyond their own borders. And that, I think, is a space of resistance or rebellion too, that the language or the words itself go beyond its own borders, and the emotionality of it. Next here is, another one that I just can't, I'm so happy to see it. I'm so happy to say, "Huge loser." Yes, you are a huge loser. Let's get a little bit closer to it. And, the forms of address, and this is the one here where we have forms of address, is that the loser has so many different ways that we can address the loser, which is Trump. And so the words kind of holds the emotions too. And that's what these pieces do. So the visuality or the aesthetics of it are really the emotional impact that we have, or I have, within these feelings and the saying. And also with you can see the time I was brought up that I have a ability with writing, being trained in Catholic school. Penmanship was very, very important in my training. But I think also the penmanship has a political reality, or why there's been such impact in the work right now is because I think we're very tired of or fatigued by social media and everything being printed out, being on the computer. So to be able to just see the work being written by the hand feels that emotionality. Let's move to the next. White terror. My God, how can even the artists even begin to start to speak out about the racism that's happening in this country? And I think that the way that I rationalize or even think about that is that I feel it's a human thing to try. So this work really comes out of the horrible violence that happened in Wisconsin when the 17-year-old went out and systematically started to shoot during a protest. And so I really am trying to address the idea that of white terrorism and white terror. Next, please. And that isn't on any found paper, right? So it's that the words itself has its own placement. And this piece is using a image from Gone with the Wind at Tara, with Scarlett O'Hara there with, I think, the twins in the opening scene. And I write over her dress and it says, "End white supremacy." And I think that what I am just saying here is that we really have to be thinking about ending cultural tropes and the possessiveness and how we put pedestal, which I look forward to talk, with Rachel here about her background in film, about how film or so many parts of culture are also participate in racism. And next here. And the patriarchy, and we can just get a little bit closer into that. I think it looks like it froze for a moment, which the patriarchy does. So here is and I do, when I'm looking at the work, it might look, oh, this is very kind of thinking about labor and art practice. And so this is really a conceptual work where I'm thinking about the work, spending time with the meaning, thinking about it in this overlay. So the work really becomes like a graffiti, and it is an assault onto the paper or imagery as graffiti works. And I'm seeing it that way, right? So I'm really kind of going against the convention of how the artist is supposed to compose and of imagery. Next, let's go to the next, please. And this other work is sort of another furthering, continuing in this conversation. There is no romance story in slavery. And this is also another image from the Gone with the Wind film that's considered the greatest film ever made, right? Or maybe Citizen Kane is up there too, but you understand my emphasis here. It's just how that is so heralded. And so I think that it's very explicit of what I'm saying is that there is no romance story in slavery, and the excuse of using romance or certain narratives in order to further racism is what I'm addressing here. Continue, please. And I have been doing, just for within my history, I did do one of my first shows in New York, A Woman's Life Isn't Worth Much, was that I did some work where I actually defaced Gone with the Wind, the cover of it, and that was in 1990. And so there's a relationship between that, and that had some about in terms of censorship and in other issues for anyone interested in my history. Here, this is now kind of more of in a humorous kind of way and taking in within camp. And here we have on a musical score, it says, friends of Dorothy wear a mask. And so this is just during this time where they say not to wear a mask. And so this is kind of a humorous nod to Dorothy, and also to what we all know that friends of Dorothy's are in terms of gender and sexuality. And so I want to include that. And let's see what the title of the song is. So I love to do that. Let me just see the title of the song here. Faithful Friends. Oh, I love Faithful Friends. And I love my faithful friends, the friends of Dorothy. And I would like to also say about that, because it's the day after Day Without Art, and just to be thinking about that proximity of me being able to share my work here with you, and for us to be thinking about how many artists that we have lost, people that we have lost that aren't able to participate here today, and as we are here. Next, let's continue, and we'll be thank you for joining me here. And this one now, think about it, is that this now is, we're moving, and this is a selected small section of my work. And I was really moved that, David would then select a work where it says need clitoris. And that sort of is my way of kind of taking off on the idea of need milk, with the infamous images where you would see, celebrities with the milk as the mustaches. And so here, actually, this is an image, an engraving from like the Pickwick Papers, and it's kind of lost, and it just says need clitoris. So I think it's, I'll just say tongue in cheek. It just sort of humorous, and I'm always delighted every time I see it. And also, I think that the word clitoris is a beautiful word. And I think it also looks beautiful to see it scrawled out, to see it's my hand as a woman, to write that out, which is actually would be secretive, and to have that exposed is also what that is to be saying too. Continue. And this was also created right when Trump was losing, no fucking, and or no fucking, and because of his denial of the election and that he has lost, is just to be saying, no, you're not a king. This isn't, a monarchy. And we can just move in a little bit closer because I have some imagery of sort of fairy tale images of the royal house. So that's what this work is. And also what I like too is that the words slightly bleed out of it, and I like the way that it's scrawled too, and with the king. Next, please. And then there's that's from like a antique children's book or vintage children's book. And I think that this is our last piece here today. And this is Women as Property. And this is from a series actually that I was doing this summer for 100 years, 100 women, for the 100 years for women to have the vote. And so I did a series of thinking about that, the theme of feminism and the right to vote. So this is just on some engravings of where the woman is sort of in this submissive position, and speaks to that is the women as property, and we know about within that history, and I'm addressing it. And I think that still is a concern and an issue going on in the world, and still needs to be spoken about. But using the vintage images is the idea that these are older ideas that are still continuing here today. With that, thank you so much, David. I loved your entrance too. That was just fabulous. I think that every gallery talk should start that way. And now, in terms of within time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be doing a short reading from my book, Grabbing Pussy. And let me just get myself ready here. And thank you for joining me. And then after my short reading, I'm going to read a couple of pieces that I'm going to start with thinking about some of the issues that we saw here today. And the one in terms of racism, but about the Confederacy and looking at the Gone with the Wind and work. This piece was from my performance, Grabbing Pussy, and it's called Take These Statues Down. Sad to see the history and culture of our great country being ripped apart in the memorial of our beautiful statues and monuments, said Trump. In keeping these statues, idols of enslavement, a memory trauma lives, ready for battle, oppression, our nation's narrative, holding the bondage shrill, a license to kill, and equaling your bigotry, support of hate, comfort to racists, safe harbor to terrorists, from devil heart, white sheet slave owner, plantation daddies who raped, pillaged Black bodies, creating children to enslave, with master names as property, bought, sold, traded flesh as chattel inherit. And whether as Jefferson, Robert E. Lee, or Strom Thurmond, or 12 years a slave, where is our national memorial to commemorate, educate our ugly history, forced, brutal, violent captivity? What part of this don't you understand? And these statues carry on fear. There is no shade protection. The tree limbs hold ropes to throat. From Jim Crow's nest, the memory is everywhere in this landscape rest. Cotton or Skittles, or no turn signal, triggered in a determined presence, constant, certain, statue idle. Commanding presence looms proof. When you do not condemn, but condones and inspires white supremacy, white nationalism, provides the cruel encounter, admiring, admiring perpetrator or pedestal from above with profiles against heaven instead of dirt. These statues must come down. We will not weep, tear up as we tear up the Confederate flag, emblems of racism as you insist with the evil heart we resist. Sing up courage now, take up your humanity fist. Resist white in power fools. Bring these statues down. Tumble marble, bronze broken, stone collapse, but we must do more than just remove the physical. We must remove and obliterate the hate to form a new legacy of freedom, equality, and justice for all. Bring these statues down. And I will do now one more, please. I think I'm going to do a piece here. I'm thinking which piece I should do. I think I'm going to do a piece here. Are we okay here with time? Is everything okay? And this piece I'm going to read is called Pussy Speak Out. And I think I'm going to read this piece is because my text here or my show here is about speaking out. And I am a pussy and I am speaking out. Pussy speak out. Men pay attention. When we say no, we mean no. Do not push your body on any of us. Rape, violation, assaults, hotel sex crimes, hidden, kept secret, harassment, assault, diagnosed, a job interview, 30 years of abuse, try 3,000 years. Over 90 accusations with just one Harvey. Every woman doesn't expect this to happen in her lifetime, but it happens to every single woman. Repeatedly, guaranteed, intergenerationally, spoken between women, mother to daughters to granddaughters, amongst friends. We are taught how to use your body at times, to feign interest till you get to safety, a pause in his release. How to disembody, disassociate as you are raped, taught to forget yet remember and hold the pain and fear the shame. Hating your body, yet the desire is abjection, held as object, trained and groomed. Grab them by the pussy, a president's war cry, whether Bill or some other friendly neoliberal or some conservative cock. It's like eating a chicken sandwich, takeout, power of pussy. Harvey Handler's an enabler to keep your jobs, enforcing silence for another slobbering box of popcorn for some other film, probably made and directed by a man, where a man gets girl, turning down the sheets to get to the script, appearing naked. Coaxing young women to overpower, intimate, grabbed encounters. Massage explicit messages with oil and motion. It never stops with a back rub. Keep me safe. Manipulation, fearing, regret, oh, embarrassment. Oh, on the porch, on the couch, in the bed, sobbing, distraught, looked at. Oh no, here it comes on the desk in the office. Get me out. A car, get the pillow to his room. Bathroom, disturbed, angry. Get me out. Take me out of here. Let me go. No, 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 no. Passing out here. You are here. Help me, help me. Together we stand, band together in solidarity. Women unite. Oh, hello, young beauty. Oh, hello, young beauty. Here is your predator. Here is your one powerful male producer, known as the Hollywood system, a systemic industry, thin and full of Botox and cleavage. To force his hairy self, you are perfect for the upcoming role, a rag doll for Harvey. No one stopped him. No one from the company, no one from the board, never stop. Too much money to be made, not too bad, put up with it. Sign a non-disclosure clause while he's giving money to a liberal cause. Mr. Weinstein, known for outbursts, tirades, explosions, private and public pounding, but it was the particular female that he enjoyed the most and gave of his most personal self, hurting the most vulnerable young woman, a female who wanted, who had ambition, who desired to work, had talent. He was brutal in slamming and punishing this woman, shaming for her desire to be an actress, to work in the field. Women written off as just another form of toxicity, coercive bargaining to keep quiet and maybe a chance at a script. For the hopeful actress, meeting with the God is devil might generate a deal, an opportunity, a chance to be part of what you trained for. But first you had to do Harvey. You had to do him. Penetrated, sucked, licked, or eaten. It was never your choice. The pain is so bad to keep your soul from slipping as you clutch to whatever dream you can salvage in this nightmare. As he enters, as you cry, and Harvey ejaculates, feeling her fear, and then transforms his power to prove that he is a man. He is in charge and takes her power. He has the plan. I will force myself, but you eat you, and you eat me, for it is a dog-eat-dog world. I am so ugly, but you will eat this ugly. Ram it down your throat, and you won't have anything like me. There's no way out. There's only a way in. I despise women. I hate women, for I want them, and I'm so ugly. I can only force myself on them for the fear of rejection. They only want one thing. They're actors, whores, and all of this to make a moving image where we all sit in a darkened theater together in the dark, left alone, survivors left in the dark. Oh, that's entertainment. It's not just the ravishing actress or stage or actress, for it's in all walks of life and career, and for artists too. A woman proves a risk to be herself because her body is dangerous, a potential target of attack. She presents by her presence. For all times, everywhere and anywhere, the male has the dominant to punish and heat and violate and hurt. A passionate, uncontrollable rage. Her body pushes him to the edge. He is built that way. He can't help himself. That's how men are. We know your life, your body has value, women. You speak truth. You aren't lying. You aren't bringing this up. You aren't bringing this on. You didn't dress this way. You weren't expecting this. Wherever you work and live, whatever you do, whoever you are, women, unite. We won't stand and be raped, groped, abused, mocked, and violated. Women, girls, females, identified, trans people deserve to be treated with dignity. Your body is yours. Respect our body. This body is mine. It is not here for you. The time has come for female empowerment. We won't be ridiculed and our bodies occupied for your benefit. No more codes of silence. No more silence. Pussy, speak out. Thank you.
All right. I just wanted to say thank you so much to Karen for that incredible reading, and it was very moving and powerful, and I hope that other folks enjoyed it as much as I did. And now, without further ado, I would like to bring in the inimitable Rachel Mason, who is a close friend of mine and collaborator on an exhibition at the gallery in 2019, which was the first time I worked with Karen, called Circus of Books, which was an homage to the legendary adult bookstore in Los Angeles owned by Rachel's parents, and also the widely acclaimed documentary of the same name about said store and Rachel's family story. So Rachel and Karen are mutual admirers, and so I'm going to turn off my screen and mic and have a little conversation between these two amazing women. Hello, Rachel, and hello, Karen.
Thank you.
Hi. Well, yeah, I guess I just want to establish the awesomeness of that and say that was so cool. And I feel like I was just attending an epic mini Karen Finley concert of some sort, but in our present COVID moment. Thank you, Karen. I love that, and I am a
Thank
big
you.
fan. Yes. So I come, I'm from the West Coast. As you can see, I'm sitting out here, and your work had such an impact on, I would say, a generation, growing up in the 90s. And I looked at you as like uber heroic powerhouse of performance art that was just, it really shaped our culture. And I'm not sure that people are aware, at the present moment of the craziness of the time frame in which you were doing some of the most powerful work, really as a performance artist ever in history. And I think, even defining the term, I would say somehow connects to your work. So maybe just to start by saying, the inspiration that you had with these drawings and that you just showed us in this amazing piece, is there a way that you think about the comparison between sort of like, I guess, for lack of a better word, the Reagan era and Jesse Helms era and all that, and the present moment, and, this kind of conflation of these really, I would say, really crazy, just astoundingly horrifying people in power that we've had to deal with over the years. What do you see in your lifetime, maybe as a comparison or difference or arcs, and as it relates to your work as an artist? If anything in that inspires any thoughts from you, I'd love to hear.
Well, thank you, Rachel. And also I'd like to just say that I lived in Los Angeles at some time, and I had a studio that was on Santa Monica.
That's cool.
And Fairfax. And I
Oh my God.
worked in West Hollywood, and I know that your parents' bookstore, and I think that I actually was awarded like May 5th or something was Karen Finley Day there. So
Oh, that's awesome.
I was close by to the bookstore.
Wow.
And so there was a proximity there.
That's cool.
So thank you. And I also want to say that I actually selected some of those readings and thinking about within our conversation too, because, and I think that these issues and some of the issues that your parents were actually dealing with in terms of, for our viewers to see Circus of Books, is thinking about censorship, right? Issues of censorship and policy in terms of that would be going to the adult industry or bodies, and how that is legislated and in terms of expression. And so for our viewers here is, I was involved in a Supreme Court case that had to deal with funding for the arts, and that the government would not necessarily have to fund projects or with the application of decency. And so my career in terms of, I like to first was started about within that, conflation is that at that time, which we're thinking about 1990 to 1998. So is that it was the precedent, and especially with Playboy. So it was Hugh Hefner that actually is a funder of the ACLU. And so I have to be thankful, right, to precedents that were started and the support that really was from, if you want to, from adult industry, or what terms are pornography, and I'm going to use that word, which is a contentious word. But so I have to really owe, and I'm very thankful for that industry and the support that they have given, that gave for freedom of expression issues everywhere. And in terms of where we are now in terms of the Reagan, is that I think that people just really forget. Everyone thinks that Trump is the worst president in the entire world. And, Reagan was not, was a horrible, cruel person. I'm not really looking forward to what he denied the AIDS crisis. I mean, what was going on there with Strom Thurmond of the idea to be taking people that were HIV positive and to put them in camps. There were, so it's a history. So this idea of this awakening and it was the Supreme Court and RBG that they voted against the case that I was involved in, NEA versus Finley, which was with 3 other artists, queer artists, and 2 of them that lived in Los Angeles, John Fleck and Tim Miller. And that and so, you know, to be thinking about that, thinking of those, how we repeat itself, and that this isn't just this one moment, that beforehand the policy of US policy was so beautiful. There were such wonderful, kind people.
Mm. It's so interesting because, yeah, in my film, you know, that's what you were referring to. My parents had this obscenity charge. It was so crazy. And, you know, they were the opposite of radical, cool performance artist people. So, you know, and yet when I look at what they, you know, my mom talks about, I remember there was a horrifying story of a young man who it was a number of years ago, committed suicide after, you know, dealing with the government coming down off of, he was one of the people involved in the WikiLeaks sort of era, you know, giving information. And my mom, I remember she had a reaction to it. She was just like, well, of course he did. You know, can you imagine fighting the government? They are so powerful. That massive weight, you know, whether or not it's just looking at this group of people that's going to obliterate your, you know, finances, having to hire lawyers to fight the government. I'm just curious, like, how was that for you emotionally? Like, just were you in a sort of state of like trauma during that, or were you just like you know, you strike me as such a powerful person? But, you know, I'm just curious, was it scary, or what was it like at that moment?
You know, in a moment like this, I appreciate that question. And I think that question is important to be asking, you know, what are the effects or the impact of censorship, or to be having what you're doing almost be like criminalized, that you're legislated. And I think that these relationships in terms of choice, whether it's the woman's body, whether it's trans people's issues, whether it's so many different about expression, and about and it is very, very, very difficult to but I had a lot of support. But yes, it was a very, very difficult kind of a situation to be living with, you know, with threats and censorship, and losing my work, and losing so much. And I think that the way, you know, why to be having that question, and then why to be looking at that now, is because I think that it's important that I can speak to the fact that I still feel committed to these issues. I'm still continuing to do that, and that I am an artist, and there is a lot of support, though, so that in the certain situation is that, yes, that the government, or there was legislation that were out and hurt a certain career, but at the same point that I was very, very supported. And so even having an opportunity like this, being able to have my work, that's really what that's where I put my energy in, is to be thinking about, you know, is about the support. And but yes, it was a very, very difficult, it was a difficult time. And I look at it, but it's also that the government, you know, I had an idealism. Would I do that now? And I had other opportunities to continue to do it. You know, I was young, and I was very idealistic, and I grew up in the 60s and 70s with that environment where and the belief in the arts, and the belief in, I mean, it's wonderful here that we have NADA, which is being based in terms of an art market system, right? And people are supporting it. But the way to get that artists become trained is from public funding. And whether it's going to be in schools, it's going to be libraries. And I got my start with grants. And so not everyone comes and that contributes to the arts always come from inherited wealth. And so that's something that's also important too. It's not just the idea of what we're talking about in terms of censorship, but about the idea of having access, and about having the access to culture, but also the access to create culture in a public way.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting, because, yeah, when I think about like the reality of what censorship looks and feels like, have you seen the movie Kathy Griffin made? She's a comedian.
Yes, I know her work. I haven't seen the film, but I
Oh,
should see it. I wasn't aware of that. Okay,
well, because the one thing I would just say is that, you know, were you aware of what she did where she held up this picture? So I love that picture so much. It's funny. I mean, it's just goofy, really. But the fact that she really got the book thrown at her in a way that is so, I mean, it's so bizarre. It's like one of those things where you imagine just like the giant Goliath walloping the David. And I mean, it's unbelievable what her movie details. She was treated like an Al Qaeda suspect. She had, you know, the FBI raid her house and do incredible damage. And I think in a way you don't remember what power the government has until suddenly you are, I mean, power to censor people until you're faced with, you know, these moments of reckoning when someone like you, or, you know, even like Ron Athey, he was also, he's a friend of mine. He was part of, you know, David Wojnarowicz. These are really sensitive artists and, you know, doing unique, interesting work. And suddenly you have this government agency, you know, almost like just like the, you know, like the NYPD showing up and like raiding a painting studio. It's not like you're involved in this criminal enterprise, you know, and yet it's so fascinating when you realize we do live in a kind of police state at times. We're not aware of it. We're not aware of that presence until these moments of horrifying acts of censorship, I think, are revealed.
Your sound, we're kind of losing your sound a little bit.
Oh,
here.
okay. So let me.
Oh, no, that's beautiful now. Yeah, those comments what we're saying about bringing up, I mean, I think the reason of bringing Kathy Griffin up, and I don't know the details of it, but in terms of thinking about celebrity culture, or that there is, that there are these moments in history, in American history, where celebrity culture, and in particular like Hollywood, where artists will be, you know, the scapegoat. And we can go and think about that during Hollywood Code, and then going into the, you know, the Hollywood 10, right? So these repeat itself, and the fact that the opposite in terms of what Trump has been saying, and that those lies are allowed, right? So that is continued, and that there's no, and that she was so demonized in comparison is really kind of shows not only, but also the misogyny. Because really what it is about that moment is that she was breaking out of the ditzy comedian, right? So a lot of her work was about the decision. I mean, her work, and she's very quick, and I've seen her, but she was entering in terms of really commenting on policy and on leadership and the president. And so it's a way to, you know, to keep her in as a female comedian, that you're supposed to be staying in line. And so it's a notice to other celebrities or comedians how to do that. And there's nothing like having the victim. So that would be the person to be doing that, you know. So it's the misogyny. The woman is property, is basically, as my link is, that she's the property. She's the property of a system. And if you break out that system, so I think that is interesting. It could be a very good, I'd really like to, it's a good conversation to be having. And I hope in the next year that we can hear more from Kathy Griffin.
No, and well, that documentary is definitely worth watching, because it reminds you of the power of the government. And, you know, that's what, when I think about your work, I mean, I really think of it in connection to fighting authority and fighting the system, and not, you know, basically questioning it. And so I had this other sort of thought to, you know, just ask, when you were talking about pornography, it was really cool that you used that word. I appreciate it. And it is a sort of contentious word, but over the years, you know, it seems to have changed from being something where there was a feminist position sort of against pornography. And I wonder if you've ever had conversations with people in that vein, because at the same time, you know, the porn industry really was there to stand up and fight for feminist performance artists, or people doing the things that revealed their body. And so I'm curious to see, to know your thoughts on how those nuances of change. And also, you know, my particular space is in the world of gay pornography, which I actually do think is its own unique, complete, separate space, because it was for a group of people that had no access to this visual symbolism and just visual language and any kind of representation on screen, except for erotic art.
Mhm. Those questions, or what you're talking about, I think I will, you know, I'll address in terms with a couple of examples. Well, I think that it's so joyous to be in situations, or to live in a society where people feel the joy and the desire of the human body, and relating, and to have that, and to that to be part of society. And how I supported myself going to school at the San Francisco Art Institute is it's not in the same way, but it's related. They're related industries. Was working in burlesque houses, or, you know, they were called strip clubs, but this is burlesque houses where near the Mabuhay and in North Beach, right by the City Lights bookstore. So that environment I found to be very productive, and brought me into this idea of instead of with the idea of the shame, and to be allowing a place for the gaze towards within desire. And so that had an impact on me, and within my own work, to be sharing that, and to see, instead of having that idea of shame and secrecy and these divisions, and with economies. And that could be a longer discussion, but and in thinking about these divisions in terms of feminism and eroticism, I think that I'm a little bit younger than that generation, but you know, that comes out of a certain understanding of and I can understand it, but my feeling is I'm for eroticism. I'm term if you want to say pornography, and so I feel that has been a part, or to get rid of the shame too. That's something that's very important in my work. And I did have recently a project I did, Sext Me If You Can, where people would sext me. And I would do them in museums and galleries. I did it at the Macaron Gallery here in Los Angeles. And then people would sext me, and then I would and then I would make artwork based on it, because my training as an artist is to looking at the female body, or looking at the body, or the nude body, and life drawing, and gazing and staring at it, and taking it in, and touching in the intimacy of the drawing and the composition. And I think that's another way to expand in our thinking about the looking at pornography, looking at the looking and the gazing, because and so that I'd like to celebrate too in my work.
No, that's really amazing, because I see you as one of those pioneers in like exploring that space between you know, erotic that exists over in this, you know, industry, and then also like the actual use of the body as an object that we can play with in the world and be you know, experiencing.
And that, I think that project was also was sponsored by Pornhub too. So these kind of, but you know, it's interesting looking at it and to see, and you know, we're having a brief general conversation and something of the subject matter of all the nuances and all the things involved. We're not really hitting on right now, but I think it's important to be discussing and thinking about that now. And I think it's important to be thinking that with the new administration, some of these contentious feelings about the body and about sex workers and their rights is not, you know, still, it isn't going to be going away on January 21st.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I appreciate you say that as well, because in filling out the COVID relief application you know, every single industry seemed to be given a access to COVID relief except sex workers. There was an actual line in the COVID relief form that if you worked in the sex industry in any capacity, you're ineligible for the $10,000 business grant. And to me, that's just such pure discrimination, because these are mostly small business owners, whether it be somebody who, you know, has a channel on Pornhub that does that work. It's not illegal. It's actually legal, and they're paying taxes. So how does that equate to not being eligible to getting COVID relief? So I definitely feel like the fight in the sex industry is still very vital, and the discrimination is really powerful. So I appreciate what you're saying as well, that you know, that discrimination needs to end. But we have so many layers. So I just was curious, was that show at Macaron sponsored by Pornhub?
Yes, it was.
That's wild.
But, you know, I think that could be another, that idea of these relationships, right? I mean, I think that there would be still some galleries or museums. I think that, let's say, Playboy, which after all these, you know, years, and there's a certain, I mean, and I'm not getting into all the different details about this, but I'm just giving, you know, in this general way, is that is considered now an acceptable company to have sponsoring certain institutional programs, you know, to some, you know, whereas I think that, you know, Pornhub isn't, you know, there's certain type,
Right.
it is going to be allowed, what money, what's, you know, and I'm going to use that term, dirty money, right? But so that could probably be another conversation here, not necessarily that.
Definitely. No, it's a great conversation. Well, no, and I think it's one of the most vital ones that are the end of the Trump era, to say, where is this big money coming from? And we are looking at that, and people are examining, you know, museum funds, and, you know, Stephen Mnuchin's name was on the Mocha wall, and, you know, plenty of people that we have questionable issues with. So it's a hard question, but it is a good one. Because Pornhub also did a lot of damage to the porn industry. I can tell you many people who will never appreciate Pornhub, but now they are like Google. It's like the Google of porn.
Amazon.
Yeah.
Amazon.
You have to play ball with them. Yeah. Well, I think, are we at our times?
Yeah, I was just gonna type in and say that I'm not
patriarchy. That's a great landing place to end on.
Yeah,
such a beautiful.
I didn't know if Nada had received any questions. We were going to do a brief Q&A, and I don't know if that actually, I'm using my phone, so I don't know if that's where the chat function is on this, but we did want to open it up if there are any questions from the public. So maybe Max, if you can see.
Let's see. Can I read a comment that just came
through?
Yeah.
If we have any questions or comments, or.
Well, that's a pretty cool comment, because it's from Buck Angel, who people may or may not know. He's
wonderful.
Yeah. So Buck, I'm glad you know Buck. He's also my partner, as it turns out. Yeah, and the first transsexual porn star. So hats off to Buck. But he was just responding about you know, the same thing with OnlyFans. It's a porn site that many non-porn people are on, and now it's legit. So these sort of big aggregate companies came in, and you know, it's a pretty hard thing, you know, to work in that industry, especially with these giant companies. And Buck says, "Thank you for all your work, Karen."
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your work too, Buck. I go to many times your Instagram, your inspiring posts that you give, and I just have to tell you, that relationship of being able to be reading or seeing your posts, then I would be making my art that day. So I love these exchanges that we get to have with each other.
That's so cool. Wow. Oh my God, that's awesome. But yeah, and to everyone out there, if you need some inspiration, go to Buck's Instagram, Buck Angel. And someone says, have followed Karen since her exhibit at Mocha, LA, back in the early 90s. That's from Ray Voss.
Oh,
brava.
Thank you. Yes, that was an exhibition I did at the museum, as stated, and it was in response to living the AIDS crisis, and much of my work was about that, and creating rituals and memorials for us to have a place to mourn. And in that relationship, and thinking about what is happening in COVID now and not having spaces to mourn, or the denial and with health care. So we have to make sure that with the vaccine coming out and about equity, vaccine equity, and healthcare equity.
And actually, I
too.
should add, thank you for all of your work as an AIDS activist and speaking out at such vital, important times, Karen. That's just something from me to you. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
that. And
Thank
I know
you.
many other people do. Somebody else is saying, such a great talk. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, David. From Heather Hubbs. And from Ray Voss, I was one of the participants in that exhibit.
Oh, how beautiful. Well, send me a note on Instagram, and everyone is, I'm at the Yam Ma'am.
Mhm.
So follow me there and see the work.
Yeah.
That's I like to being able to connect with people and
Yeah, there's
everything. And
many connections here. So this is so great. And yeah, I guess without any further questions or comments, this was a huge honor for me. You're a hero to me and an icon and a fan, and will always be. So thank you, Karen.
Oh, thank you. And I've enjoyed the film that what you're doing, and Circus of Books. It's wonderful. Everyone go see it. Thank you, everyone. And come see the show, child. And thank you, Nada.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Karen and Rachel and
Thanks,
David.
everyone.
Yes, and so you at Marriage in just by this online at the NADA Art Fair. And thank you, Nada, for putting on this talk, and Lauren for my goofy introduction, and Rachel and Karen and everyone. And have a lovely
Wait, one final note
afternoon.
from one more icon of art, from Linda Montano, who is
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
a fan of Portland. Thank you for being, she said, seeing you, Karen.
Oh, how lovely. Bye, everyone.
Everyone. Yes.
Thank you all.